Mr. Brian Caesar, the Graduate Research Assistant, Ms. Crystal Gittins, and Mr. Roger Hector. I would ask the members of this committee to introduce themselves, starting, of course, with the Vice Chair.
Good afternoon all and welcome. Paul Richards, Vice Chairman.
Good afternoon, Nigel De Freitas, member.
Good afternoon, Ayana Webster-Roy, member.
Good afternoon, Rudal Monilal, member.
Good afternoon, Jayanti Lachmidial, member.
Good afternoon, I am Randall Mitchell, member.
And the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. The objectives and background of this inquiry, the Joint Select Committee, is to pursue an inquiry into security, safety, and protection of citizens with specific reference to the factors that contribute to the prevalence of illegal firearms and gun violence in Trinidad and Tobago. The inquiry and this inquiry seeks to understand matters related to national security policy in Trinidad and Tobago, to consider the security, safety, and protection of citizens with specific reference to the factors that contribute to the prevalence of illegal firearms and gun violence in Trinidad and Tobago, to understand the primary factors that contribute to the prevalence of illegal firearms and gun violence, to identify prevailing trends concerning illegal firearms and gun violence, to measure the effectiveness of strategies currently being utilized by stakeholders, particularly yourselves, to identify additional strategies to address the primary contributing factors and to develop the proposed recommendations to Parliament where applicable. The guidelines are simple. Questions are posed to the chair. The answers are received through the chair. And we have with us three very important entities. And what we will do is we would call on you to introduce yourselves. Because of time constraints, we normally have a brief opening remarks. It will not exceed and ought not to exceed 2 minutes, but that is something that is within your purview. You do not have to give an opening address. So should we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Chair, and all present here. My name is MacDonald Jacob. I'm the Acting Commissioner of Police, and I'm just looking forward to interact with you in a positive way this afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair. My name is Cohen Francis. I'm an Acting Senior Superintendent of Police, presently attached to the Northern Division and Attorney at Law for TTPS.
Lyle Alexander, Chairman of the Port Authority.
Good day. Azim Ali, Estate Security Superintendent for the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good afternoon. Lydia Marcial, Comptroller of Customs and Excise.
Good afternoon, Yasmin Harris, Deputy Comptroller Enforcement, Customs and Excise Division.
Good afternoon, Riyad Juman, Assistant Comptroller, Customs, Acting.
If there are no opening remarks from any one of the entities, we would want to go directly into the interrogation, the posing of questions. Is there any objections that we go directly into it from the entities?
No objections.
Well, Member Lachmidial, you can begin your interrogation.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, I would like to hear from perhaps all or each agency what would be, if you had to choose one specific weakness that you think exists right now in the law enforcement structure in Trinidad and Tobago that is contributing to the prevalence of gun violence? What would you identify as the most significant weakness that needs to be addressed? It might be hard to choose one, but in the interest of time.
Starting with the commissioner.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much, Chair. What we are dealing with as it relates to the aspect of firearms is we have the situation dealing with transnational organized crime. This transnational organized crime, you know, and with globalization, have caused a significant impact on Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, there is in fact an agreement between the Merida Agreement initiative between United States, Mexico, and Colombia that was actually introduced in 2007 and came to some measure of operationalization in 2013. It is now having a significant effect on the landscape with their cooperation between each other. And Trinidad and Tobago now is one of the countries that is targeted by persons involved in organized crime from Colombia, from Mexico, to be utilizing it as a transshipment point for drugs. Drugs is the main issue that comes through in relation to our port to be transshipped into the European market. In fact, the CARICOM impacts in their 2013 report identified this particular initiative and how it is affecting us. And about 3 weeks ago when I went to the UK, dealing with the National Crime Agency in the UK, that was one of our main discussion and the concern with it. So I am looking at all our various ports of entry. And in some instances, we have the situation dealing with FedEx and all the courier service. And I actually have before me some data to demonstrate that over a period of 2 years, there's something like 798 million worth in drugs that have passed through that we have intercepted through a combination work between the port and the police. You know, the customs and the police that we have intercepted during the period. But with that, guns will also come as payment when this whole transaction is taking place. So I identify our various ports of entry and also the courier services that exist within Trinidad and Tobago. And as I said, I have solid data to identify this weakness and how globalization is affecting us.
Right. So if I could summarize one of your points there, basically you're saying that with this 2013 implementation of the Merida Agreement, criminals shift gears and we are now being utilized more because the countries that are part of this agreement are now a bit more robust in terms of their supervision of their ports and so on. Well, and this would be a follow-up question to everybody. Having identified the weakness and the main weakness, though, what steps are being taken since you have data and you have this knowledge of this agreement and the impact of the agreement? What steps are being taken to address the situation that is now evolving and that you've identified?
Well, you recognize that is affecting the entire Caribbean, right from Trinidad to Barbados to Grenada to Alexis and Jamaica. So therefore, CARICOM impacts, which is the law enforcement coordinating body in CARICOM, recently launched a unit called the CGIU, you know, the Crime, Firearm, and Intelligence Unit that was launched about 3 weeks ago with a combination of intelligence officers from all over the Caribbean in order to handle the situation, and that is directly linked with the ATF, the FBI, the CIA, and Homeland Security. In addition to that, we have established something called AirCup, and CCOP that is supported by the European Union that have been set up to deal with both aspects of maritime issues and then issues at the various airports.
We heard about ECOP and CCOP recently when we had the minister here. Can you tell us how long that's been operational and what have been the results achieved so far from the implementation of those programs?
No, well, in relation to the ECOP, which is more recent, the ECOP just recently we had sent persons to Jamaica to be trained because what is happening in Jamaica is ahead of us in setting up the ECOP. And just about 2 months ago, officers involved were sent to Jamaica to work with the Jamaicans for a period and then return. Right, very soon, I think within the next month or so, the office will be actually set up and instituted at the airport. However, CCOP have been doing work within the last 2 years or so. CCOP have been functioning, and they have done several interdictions and do several searches on different maritime assets within our seacoast. And in some instances, some of the results that I have here with particular interceptions on the sea, was a work being done by the CCOP, and that is directly linked with the Police Service Transnational Organized Crime Unit.
All right, we could let the other agencies now for the same question about your identified weaknesses and mitigation strategies to deal with what you would consider to be the major identified weakness.
Thank you, Chair. The Customs and Excise Division has identified we have a human resource challenge together with tools and equipment in order to fight this growing illegal firearm prevalence importation. To expand on that, the trained staff is now becoming depleted, and the units established for the crime fighting and interdiction are very small in numbers. Most of those units operate on a 24/7 basis. So that on a shift, if it's the marine interdiction unit, you need at least 6 to 8 persons. Presently, we only have 2 to 3 persons. I cannot send out 2 to 3 members of staff out at sea. That is a risk. So those are some of the challenges we face. Also, we have asked for scanners to be placed at all of our transit sheds throughout the country. Yeah, I have a voice issue.
Yes.
Would you want to, or acting controller, would you want to finish the answer, or Madam Controller, are you able to finish? If you are not, we will not press you.
I'm sorry, I had surgery.
In fact, I could perhaps just interject one moment there, because the Comptroller has raised a very significant issue that we've been debating a lot about, and that is the issue of scanners. So in your answer, Madam Deputy Comptroller, could you tell us how many scanners you all have in terms of actually being acquired, and how many are functional at this time as part of your response?
Thank you. If I may just step back a little before. With respect to the staffing, I think we have to understand the situation we are in. The establishment calls for approximately 700 members of staff. That includes officers and guards. An important factor to take into consideration is that this establishment predates the explosion in containerized cargo. It predates staffing required for MIU, K9, intelligence, post audit, investigation. So we are looking at an establishment of approximately 700 that dates back to the early 90s in 2022. Add to that, we now have 272 experienced officers and 82 recently employed acting officers. So you understand when the comptroller indicates human resources is a problem, it is a major problem. If we look at the police force, we have approximately over 6,000 police officers. So I need us to take that into consideration. With respect to the scanners, unfortunately, the only scanners we have operational are the ones in the baggage room at Piaco. The scanners that were donated to us by the US are no longer functional. And if we could recall, they were 2003. So they've outlived their lifespan, their useful lifespan.
Can I ask you, and it's a direct question now, before I move to Member De Freitas. The scanners are down. Have you all replaced them? How long have they been down?
The mobile scanners have been down since last year. They were inoperable from 2021.
Have you replaced them?
We have made proposals. We have to understand that the Customs and Excise is a division. It's not a department.
No, no, hold on, madam. Hear my question.
Yes.
Have you made arrangements and requested that they be replaced?
Yes, we have.
Through whom? Which office?
Sir, Chair, we have done proposals. Money was allotted to the division to purchase scanners. We have done the proposals. It was approved. We have also sent out an RFP to Central Tenders Board because the scanners are not available locally. These scanners have to be sourced to specifications that we require. You have to look also at the frequency that are emanating from these scanners. It must be OSH compliant and all of that. So it took some time in coming up with these specifications.
Member Lashmidial, it's a short question we permitted, and I want, as soon as you're finished, Member De Freitas, you go right into it. Madam, I will take your answer, and I will say nothing more at this.
I just want to clarify. You said the only scanners working are at the baggage terminal at Piaco. Clarify for me how many, and then clarify for me how many we have, whether it's donated or purchased, that are not working presently. That's just, I just want the numbers exactly.
We have scanners in the transit shed of Swissport. We have 2, so that's 2 there. We have 1 in ABL, that's also a transit shed. We have 1 in shed 10, and unfortunately, that's the sum total of scanners we have at transit sheds.
4, okay. And how many?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, coming off of the line of questioning that has started thus far, I have sat on this Joint Select Committee of National Security for about 6 years, since 2015. We, both Member Richards and myself, have been here for that long. We've been to the Customs and Excise location in Port of Spain, as well as in the airport. We've treated with this narrative as it relates to the scanners. What I'm hearing now is not what we heard in 2018. What we heard in 2018 was that the scanners, stationary and mobile, were donated. They were not being used. All OSH compliance was received. All that was required was a sign off by the union. A particular individual who was heading the union at that point in time refused to sign off to allow the workers who were already trained and identified to sit in that room, which Senator Richards and myself saw, to be able to operationalize these scanners. It was said at that point in time that the system used right now to check these containers when they came in were manual. They would go in and literally check, and it was supposed to be random. The scanners were supposed to beef up that system to allow you to check containers because you're scanning it. You're going around the container. The driver didn't even need to come out of the vehicle. Oh, no, he did, sorry. He had to exit the vehicle, but it would take approximately 8 to 10 minutes to scan a container, allowing you to scan more containers in a shorter period of time. All that was required at that time was a sign-off by the union, which he eventually did. I am surprised in 2022 to hear that the scanners are down. I am telling you now that whoever donated those scanners would look at us and say, I'm not giving you any more. Because as far as I understand, the use of those scanners was not effective. The fact is, it's being said right now, and the TTPS is taking licks for it, that illegal firearms are coming in through the legal ports of entry. And the major responsibility for that is customs. What do you guys have to say for that?
With respect to the maintenance of the scanners were maintained by the manufacturer, not by customs. So the fact that they are not operational in 2022 links back to the entity that has the contract with the manufacturer. And as with all things, scanners have a lifespan. And in 2022, the mobile scanners that we had in operation have outlived their lifespan. The need was to replace those existing scanners.
But you do understand what I'm saying, right?
I understand.
So let's walk the timeline again.
Mm-hmm.
Scanners are donated. They're not used because the union didn't sign off on it. The union, when we, Senator Richards and myself, and the last Joint Select Committee on National Security came and took a look and indicated and asked for an explanation as to why and kicked up a fuss, to use a colloquial phrase, the union then signed off on it. This was 2018, 2019, Senator Richards, correct me if I'm wrong. We are in 2022, and I'm now hearing from you all nationally and live on TV that 2 years later, after we kicked up that fuss, they need to be replaced because they're obsolete. So we got the scanners, didn't use them, fought to get them used by the union, and now you're telling me they're obsolete and need to be replaced. You understand why we're having a problem with this? Same time, illegal firearms are coming through the legal ports of entry in increasing numbers. So we ask again, I'm not asking the TTPS, they are after the fact. They deal with the firearms when they're already in the country. I'm talking to customs. Telling me that the scanners are obsolete and need to be replaced is not helping me. It's not helping the citizens of this country. What I want to know, and what every citizen of this country wants to know, that statement that is out there, it's coming through the legal ports of entry. You guys are customs. What is your answer for that?
The Customs and Excise Division, the comptroller, is attempting to have the scanners replaced as quickly as possible so that they can be operational. An RFP was designed and submitted, shall be submitted to Central Tenders Board for approval so that we can have the scanners operational.
Chairman, could I just a quick
go,
interjection?
Yes.
Good afternoon again, and thank you for being here. Was it, in terms of the operation of the Customs and Excise Division, would you have had information related to the lifespan of these scanners before they became obsolete? And if so, why wait until they become obsolete to start to do proposals and RFPs to replace them so that there's a gap in coverage? That is confusing to me as a professional organization.
Unfortunately, the procurement procedure is one that requires you to go through particular steps, as we would all be aware. I agree the timeliness is something that we should have ensured that the replacement of the scanners should have been done in a timely manner, and we recognize that it would affect the safety of the citizens of this country. It's something that Customs recognize. But we are attempting, as we speak, to have the scanners replaced. The lifespan of the scanners was affected due to poor maintenance. Again, the
But you would have been aware of the poor maintenance issue while the scanners were in place. So all this information that you're bringing is not new. You're in charge. Scanners brought in, issues having them operationalized, lifespan being expired. There should be a timeline in project management so that there's coverage because of the critical nature of your operations. So the public hearing this is asking, well, why are we surprised that illegal guns are coming in? An agency is dropping the ball. Is that an accurate assessment, or is it an over-exaggeration?
It's not an accurate assessment. The fact of the matter is the Customs and Excise Division made every attempt to utilize the scanners that were available to us.
Mr. De Freitas, continue, because at an appropriate time I will ask Member Lachmidial to, she has a question. But
Thank you, Mr.
continue.
Chair.
Member Lachmidial will come to you.
So just for our edification, how are these containers being checked now?
The containers are being checked through physical examination. We are conducting risk management or risk assessment, and containers that require examination are forwarded for physical examination at our CES. Unfortunately, that is the best available avenue at this point in time.
Do you have the staffing and the
Thank you.
the power?
Thank you. I was now going to add that.
Hold on.
Sorry, sir.
To do this effectively?
We do not have sufficient staff. I will tell you, our container examination station has 14 bays. But unfortunately, with the staff that we have, we can only assign 3 examination officers to assess at Port of Spain that has 14 bays. So our level, our efficiency is compromised by the fact that we have limited staff.
Okay, so how many containers on average are you scanning right now? Let's do that per month. How many come in, and then how many you're able to scan?
We have that data here. At we now have operational the fixed scanner only at the Port of Spain. And for January to August, we scanned 3,998.
Out of how many?
Out of 23,000. Yes, sir.
Okay, here's what we are going to do. We would ask you, and we would want this within a 2-week period, to provide us in writing relative to the purchase of the scanners, relative to manpower, at least some temporary relief, so that through this committee, the committee will decide if we can pen an urgent letter to be delivered by hand, by email, and by fax to whichever agency is responsible. Because you see, what happens here is that when firearms take people's lives, there's no coming back. I say no more, and I go to Member Lachmidial to pose a question.
Just one quick question I think it's important for us to understand. This RFP that you spoke about, how many scanners do you propose to buy through this process that is taking, well, going in a year now? Sorry?
So a scanner is over $1 million US.
Right.
So we are looking with the money allocated to us of 90 million, we could safely purchase 4 scanners.
It's the RFP that you've put out for the purchase of 4 scanners?
Oh, but we didn't put a number, we just put out
Okay.
the RFP.
Thank you very much. I have just about 2 questions. This is to the comptroller or the deputy comptroller of customs. You keep using the word, it's unfortunate. You said it's unfortunate that the scanners are now obsolete and you have to purchase scanners. You said it's unfortunate that you're understaffed. But understanding how things work in the public service, it is the division's responsibility to ensure that the positions are provided, created, proposed, ministry, PMCD. It is the division's responsibility to do that. With respect to the RFP, it's the division's responsibility to look at the life cycle of the scanner, use foresighting to ensure that scanners are operational. It is the division's responsibility to do those things. In fact, it is also the division's responsibility. You spoke about Central Tenders Board, and I'm sure everybody around this table immediately felt that that is a 8 to 12-month process. And there are other procurement avenues where this procurement can be done much faster through a state enterprise or through other mechanisms. Do you not accept that the word is not unfortunate, but the word is gross negligence on the part of the Customs Division?
No, sir, I do not accept that it is gross negligence on the part of the Customs and Excise Division.
Okay.
We would recall that in 2008, there was a recommendation for a transition to the TTRA. What has happened in the last 15 years? The Customs and Excise Division has been in a sort of limbo where we have suffered multiple loss, staff attrition, where the staff was not replaced. So you have to understand, if I may, sir, for the past, from 2008 to 2022, our staff, we have suffered tremendously staff attrition. So it is not the division. The division can only make, as a division in the public service, we can only make recommendations for the filling of vacancies and the appointment of officers. And I can assure you, recommendations have been made by multiple comptrollers for the filling of such posts. But unfortunately, and I have to use the word again, the Comptroller of Customs and Excise, when it comes to staffing, can only make recommendations, which have been made throughout the years for the filling of the posts.
Okay, respectfully, I do not accept that. I think that that is a cop-out. But I will ask Mr. McDonald Jacob. We have had evidence before this committee that the majority of illegal firearms are coming into the country through the legal ports. We also have information before this committee that 85 or 87% of the murders are being conducted with illegal firearms, some of which may very well be some of your officers. I want to ask you, sir, sitting next to you, you have the representatives of the Customs and Excise Division, who is responsible for tracking, detecting illegal firearms in this country. You are the Commissioner of Police. You are burdened with illegal firearms and crime in this country. How do you feel about that?
Well, this is something that we discuss when the heads meet and identify how challenging and difficult it is for me and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in this situation. We have made several recommendations, and that is the reason why we support all the initiatives that is put in place with the Air Cup and all the other areas. We have a transnational organized crime unit, and they are doing tremendous work. And you remember I mentioned FedEx and all the others and some of the same sheds and bonds that they talk about, you know, and we have spoken to break some of the traditional approaches where in some instances the police will have to wait to have access to certain places. And we are saying, and we have agreed, that once we have information that is afforded to us, we must be able to go in and do our searches and execute our warrants when necessary, whether it's in a bond, whether it's in an area that the customs may control, and we develop a relationship with customs in order to do that. But it takes a lot of time and energy from us in order to mop up all these firearms that is in fact coming into the country. And I had mentioned that we have now made a record of 115 what we call, when we do submachine guns and rifles, that we have seized off the streets, and the average was 67 in the past 2 years, but this year we already reached 116. So it's a lot of work that is required. We have a firearm initiative being carried out right now with all the law enforcement officers. And, you know, the whole issue is that it takes a tremendous amount of effort because, as you said, 87% of our murders is in fact being used. The tool that is being used is the firearms. So, you know, again, I don't feel good about it at all, but as I said, the heads next to me, we do have heads meeting, and we have discussions on the way forward in how to deal with the situation.
Yes, so we have to move beyond discussions and we go to actions. But Commissioner, could you refresh my memory with the initiatives that you have in detecting illegal firearms and taking them off the street? Refresh my memory. When last was anyone in customs, a member of that agency, or even a member of the ports, the port of Port of Spain, when last was any of them arrested? Was anyone arrested or successfully prosecuted for complicity or for negligence? Charged? Well, that's the thing.
Well, I cannot say about the internal aspect concerning suspension, you know, but I can say that within the last 2 years or so, I can't remember any situation where the persons necessary from customs were in fact charged. I could remember doing some work with someone who had in fact been dismissed from customs and lived somewhere down in South in Penal, and we did some work in relation to that individual who was pretending to be a custom officer and had custom stamps and all of that. But remember, just within the last 3 years, we have reached the point to come to the full understanding and agreement that most of the firearms are in fact coming through our legal ports of entry, right? When we have set up the one-stop shop in relation to what we call it and start to link with the ETF and do the intense tracing of the firearms, that is when we came to the conclusion with hard evidence that most of the firearms are coming from our legal ports, and we get the from, whether it's from Baltimore, Georgia, Texas before. there was a belief that the majority of firearms were coming through our illegal ports dealing with, and focus was in relation to Venezuela. Yes, we have firearms coming from there, but not at the level of the firearms coming from North America. It's just probably about 5% of the firearms coming through Venezuela. And that is the hard facts, and it was identified within the last two years or 3 years. And that is when the focus started to be on the whole aspect of the customs and what is happening. And you know with that, you have to build the intelligence. So that probably is the reason why we haven't reached the point to actually prosecute some of the facilitators in relation to what is happening within our legal ports of entry.
Yeah, just one quick question. I just have to ask it because I always wondered about it. It's a bit of irony. And this is to members from Customs. Are you aware of any member of Customs having their families affected by gun crime using illegal firearms? Illegal firearms? It's just ironic. I'm just asking. Because there are consequences to allowing guns to pass, or the ineffective use of customs, the ineffective deployment of your resources in detecting illegal firearms. So I was just wondering, anybody in customs, are you all affected by crime and illegal firearms?
I assure you, sir, every member of staff of the Custom and Excise Division is affected by the level of crime in this country, either directly or indirectly. We have hard-working officers whose lives are threatened. So yes, we are affected and concerned about the condition of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the illegal trade in firearms. It is not a lack of interest or a lack of desire to address the issue. It's an absence of the available tools and mechanisms to address the situation.
Madam,
Customs and Excise is willing to work.
Tell us, hold on, before you give us speech. Tell this committee what are the tools
that are needed.
Hold on, I would say to you, and the committee have seen the report. We will try to be as gentle as we can, but we wrote since the 10th of October asking for a response from Customs. We asked that it be submitted to us by the 20th of October. We got it yesterday. We don't want to vilify anyone, but we want to say, get robust. Because this, Mrs. Secretariat and I, we are prepared to work whenever, whatever it takes to have this delivered. But if it is delivered like this, remember, Richard, when did you receive it? Everybody received it last night. So get robust. I want, before Member Munilal begins his interrogation, to ask the Port Authority. Port Authority, I've read your submissions, and you agree with me that the port, including the port of Port of Spain and other ports, is a point of entry for illegal firearms, yes?
That is correct, sir.
Then how is it in your report, then, that we are told at page 3 that the last serious interdiction for firearms and ammunition at Port of Spain was on the 22nd of March, 2021? I'm asking the Port Authority that. 2021, what happened to 2022? What happened to 2023? And the fact that the numbers of illegal firearms entering Trinidad and Tobago through various ports have increased. Tell me, Port Authority.
The detection that you speak about on the 23rd of March 2021, that was the Customs and Excise Division who made that bus.
What about the Port Authority then? When last has the Port Authority had, and the security in the Port Authority, be it the Port of Trinidad, the Port of Tobago, when last have we made a fine? When last have you had a fine?
On November 6, 2022, at the Port of Scarborough, in conjunction with the TTPS, where a vehicle was searched, 2 firearms were recovered, and a quantity of narcotics.
Do you think that the Port Authority is adequately engaged in the process of trying to eliminate the entry of illegal firearms? I would want to ask this to your chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the Port Authority is not tasked to deal with importation of goods and services from the inspection perspective. That is in the remit of the customs. We provide every opportunity, every facility that is required of us to be able to enable them to do their job. So that is the reason, the simple reason why you don't see the Port Authority having busts and fines of illegal weapons coming into the country. You would have noticed the comment that made about the fine or the activity in Tobago, which was on the domestic link. There's activity at that level. But importation of goods and services, we simply transport stuff in. We don't inspect.
Under the rubric, what are the primary challenges being experienced by the Port Authority that you can say in 2022? With specific reference to the remit of this inquiry, the primary challenges currently experienced by the Port Authority are investigative and prosecutorial collaboration and actions from the TTPS and the Customs and Excise Division. We are one team. Why is that still a primary challenge? Look to your left, you have the TTPS. Look further to your left, you have the customs. Look outside, you have people who are suffering. Why is this still a primary challenge?
Chairman, the day-to-day, at the day-to-day routine level, I am satisfied that the collaboration that takes place between the units is extremely good. Extremely good from that perspective, where, I mean, if something happens, we are able to share experiences, to share information across all the agencies. The legal authority, however, rests to prosecute criminal activities. That really rests with the police and the customs division. So we have to follow the guidelines of the law. From that perspective, it pushes the Port Authority a little way back from the determination of the activities. But we are involved in everything that whatever goes on, and aware of that. That collaboration takes place. Conflicting?
As soon as he's finished, we'll go.
Just a follow-up question to the chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Retired Colonel Alexander. What is the function of the Port Police?
Port Police.
What is the function?
Port Police, the superintendent can answer that better than I would.
Yeah. Because you spoke about a lot of what they can't do. Yeah. What can they do? What is their remit?
The core function of the Port Authority Police Department is to protect the assets of the Port Authority, its employees, and its port users. In addition, to protect the cargo that comes in, that we receive when it is receive it in one condition, stored, and to ensure that it is delivered to its correct consignee.
So to secure the port facility.
To secure the port facility. We do have a law enforcement function because we are precepted officers.
But you can't search And that's what your statement
We
says.
cannot search imported cargo.
Oh.
So, cargo on the port. Member Munilal, before we go on, please have your interrogation.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I did benefit, of course, from the responses and the questions of colleagues, so it was a good wait. I have a series of questions to ask, of course, that would, in a way, piggyback on some of the issues raised by my colleagues. But let me begin by saying that, as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure my colleagues as well, this interrogation, these issues are very, very serious issues. And of course, we mean no personal attack on any one of you. Because, you know, many of our problems are systemic, they're organizational. So it is not that these questions I ask is against anyone with any personal, you know, personality issue or anything like that. So maybe I begin with the lightest question. Madam Comptroller, given all that we have heard this afternoon and the questions that have been asked, particularly to the Comptroller, may I ask you, if you had to grade yourself, what grade would you give yourself? We got a B+ from another officer yesterday.
Sir, I was going to say a B+ or A-. I have really tried to put things in place. Putting these things in place has resulted in personal attacks by the staff and others, members of the community. We are really trying. I know that is not sufficient. We have to get the job done.
But you're restraining yourself from giving yourself a grade.
But we're hearing, madam, have some water and respond. Because we're hearing you and your response carries a lot of gravitas. What you're saying is important.
So I will give myself a B+ because
well.
the efforts have been immense. My staff and myself, my management team, we have tried to put things in place together with the other agencies of the Ministry of National Security. We work hand in hand with them. Most of our interdictions was based on intelligence received from the various agencies. We are collaborating. Results are coming forward. Not everything is put in the media, but we have results.
Thank you. And members of our guests, I have a series of questions to ask, including one or two new areas. So if the response could be as crisp as possible, and you can commit to giving information if I ask and it's not readily available. So let me go. The first issue is that, Madam Comptroller, in the police service, given all that has happened over the years, the public is now aware that there are specialized units in the police service, particularly Professional Standards Bureau, Police Complaints Authority, and so on, that deals with, you know, rogue officers or allegations of wrongdoing, and yes, corruption in law enforcement. So the police over the years, because of maybe a major spotlight on the TTPS, most people are aware that the police now has agencies that are working, they are functional. You look in the newspaper, you will hear, you know, an arrest by the Professional Standards Bureau, and so on, so on, so on. In terms of the customs, is there operating institutions in the customs that deals with allegations of corruption involving customs officers? And it's a straightforward question.
Thank you. Chair, we do have a preventive branch, which is the interdiction unit of the customs, who will investigate all matters pertaining to staff as well as stakeholders. But we are guided by the public service regulations on how to deal with corrupt officers or any other crime being committed as a public servant. We are still under the public service.
Just to take you further on that, but with allegations of customs officers, for example, involved in criminal wrongdoing, that to me are criminal matters for the police. So do you collaborate with the police now in terms of your unit in the customs collaborating with the relevant unit in the TTPS, where persons are, it is alleged they're involved in what would amount to criminal action?
So again, Chair, yes, we do collaborate with the police on some of these matters. Within recent times, you would have heard of the illegal pharmaceuticals that has been passed on to the police service. The arms and ammunition that we get, that was also passed on to the police. So yes, we do. We are also liaising with the U.S. advisor attached to the Controller of Customs and Excise in forming an internal affairs unit that will look after the welfare of the customs and seek to go after the officers who are suspect corrupt or in corrupt activities.
And when would this internal affairs unit be up and functional, you estimate?
Well, we are trying for early 2023.
Before or after the scanners?
Well, hopefully before the scanners.
Now, and I make this point as well because I am a representative of people, so people talk to me. That's my job, to listen to constituents and so on. And it seems that one of the most proficient and efficient unit in customs would be those officers who stick around at the immigration area to check to see if a citizen or businessman coming in with 100 or 200 US extra, and then search every bag in sight. Now, could you give some commitment that there would be equal efficiency, proficiency, maybe even deployment of some of these extremely efficient gentlemen and lady into looking at, containers, scanner, these issues with the lack of scanning and so on, and other areas that may be relative to the illegal firearm of which we are saying, which is so hard, is so upsetting that when we were growing up, we always envisioned that illegal firearms would be coming in a wooden box on the beach and police would be there in the night in a shootout with people. And then we learn that this is coming through the normal approved legal ports. And that, has shaken some of us in lawmaking. So that there is efficiency in customs. There is efficiency as it relates to checking on the $100 and $200 extra, but we may not have the same efficiency as it relates to the real matter of illegal firearms. And on that now, I want to ask, we are hearing tools and equipment. I heard before, you have really a twin pillar you're standing on here. You're saying, look, there's a problem, we acknowledge that, the information is not wrong, we don't have scanners, and we don't have staff. Scanner is one tool and equipment. What other tool, what other equipment, what other technology you require that you don't have?
Do you want to put that in writing, to put it in writing, or do you want to, because remember this is being done live, we don't want to
suggest that
let the cat out of the bag, so to speak.
Yes, we were going to suggest that we submit that in writing.
Sure, that would be fine. That would be fine with me.
I gathered as much.
I would go to another issue on customs and then one issue for the TTPS. On the customs now, we are hearing a story developing all afternoon on staffing. I took a small note here. You are saying that an archaic establishment figure from the 90s, 700. You don't have 700, even as an archaic figure, you don't have that. You have 272 plus 80 something, 350 more or less. Now, could you provide the committee, myself, I'm very curious, with some records, some memos, some reports, some requests, where you have been making requests over the years for increase in staffing at customs, and that request, for whatever reason, has never been dealt with in a way to lead you to recruit more and more and keep up to date, even with the archaic establishment figure. You understand the point I'm making? If you can make available to us a dossier with the letters from controllers and so on over the years, requesting staff, and even the responses as well, because that is a very, very serious matter, because it suggests that even if we have a TTRA, if you could take the TTRA, we will be in no better position, because we have failed over the years collectively to increase the staffing of such an important unit. So could you give me an undertaking to provide that? Thank you very much. My final area of questioning, Mr. Commissioner, again, the issue I'm raising now is that I believe that the time has come for another look, fundamental look at the organization, the reorganization of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which was done, as you know, 15, 16 years ago or so, by way of law, but now by way of organization. In this matter of the illegal firearms and 85% of what is now a record murder rate in our history, 85% more or less committed by illegal firearms. How is the TTPS structured to deal with this? Meaning, which unit deals with this specifically? What is the staffing of that unit? What is the resource there? What more resource does the TTPS need to tackle this critical, this grave matter? Because we are working together here. One is at the point of coming in, importation. Your job then starts when somebody's job fails. Essentially, the TTPS job is really taken off because somebody else failed. How are you structured to deal specifically with this matter? And what more would you suggest that the TTPS would need?
Thank you very much to you, Chair. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in 2020, in fact, established a central intelligence bureau within the TTPS, right? And I was fortunate to be, when I came off leave, to be given that responsibility by the former Commissioner of Police. And that is where we combined a lot of our technological and intelligence unit under one bureau and under one head, basically, so that we can get that synergy and coordination that is required, right? And even our TOCU, we talk about TOCU, our Transnational Organized Crime Unit, falls under and fall in that bureau, right? Mr. Francis, yes, Senior Superintendent Francis, was originally in charge of that particular unit. It is now developing, and we have to get the necessary coordination. But questions are being asked when we look at it, of whether or not we should, in fact, continue with that combination, or should we now pull it back out and have the OCNFB Organized Crime and Narcotics Unit that was existing separately to be placed as a separate unit and have a firearm interdiction unit. The reason for it is that even though we are talking about firearms here, what is generating our issues in Trinidad and Tobago is really drugs. And here being a transshipment point for drugs, as I mentioned, and coming along with the drugs is payment with firearms and all of that. Yes, we have firearms when we just come in because we know we have some gangs that are one particular gang that is directly dealing with the firearm, the whole aspect of firearm trade. But the facilitator and the issues that we are having is drugs coming from the Central America and South America to be transshipped to the European market, and with it, it comes with guns and things for payment. So we are looking at it to reconsider whether or not we should, in fact, pull back out and have the organized crime and narcotics unit dealing with narcotics operating as a separate entity, because we are now trying, as I said, to get that synergy, and we are looking at this. So one of our whole strategic approach when looking at 2023 is to sit down and look at what is happening and see whether or not that is really working, and we may have to now take back out and have this specialized section operating and have a separate firearm interdiction unit. But it should still fall under the same head right, as in relation to the Central Intelligence Bureau. So that is what we are looking at right now. As it relates to staffing, because of that relationship with the coming together, that was actually done and organized to save that aspect of manpower where persons are, we are cross-trained, our intelligence officers, so we will not have to have a section with 400 persons here, 300 there, but some of the things that they do actually interlock with each other. So it may not necessarily require any significant additional manpower. So where we are is just restructuring and looking at it. And probably when we look at it within the next few weeks, we will be able to provide something in writing to you all, how we see the way forward in order to really handle this organized crime situation that we are seeing. And within there, you remember, we have facilitators on our shows here, and a high level of complicity also within across the border, right? Whether it's customs, whether it's in the police, or whether it's on the port, you have facilitators. And we normally share the intelligence information and the police services, in fact, doing some work in an aggressive manner in relation to that, because if we can deal with these facilitators and get them out and get them before the court, it will do well to deal with our situation in Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. I have my final.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. To slip back to the Comptroller on one matter, I don't think we clarified this issue. We also heard that in procuring the scanners, you're going through the Central Tenders Board. Is it a competitive bid for scanners? Because to my knowledge, through the National Security Council, you can do a sole selective for such an item of national security, but that would be time constraint. You can do it very quickly in an alternative route using the National Security Council. So I just wanted to inquire.
Thank you. We did ask permission from the PS to nominate a sole select. The last scanners that were donated were from Lidos, from the US. So, but we were advised for transparency to go through the Central Tenders Board. And that is the reason why we went that way.
And the advice came from?
From our PS.
Permanent Secretary. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, particularly, and I want to say this to you, because we said it to another agency, no charge is a perfect charge. There'd be loopholes, there would be certain gaps, but you know that there are two standards that apply when you charge at various times. There's a prima facie standard, and then there's a standard of proof beyond reasonable doubt, which is a jury question. We say now, as it relates to firearms and firearm-related crime, that sometimes just an interference may stop a stream of action, a trend. It may or may not result in a conviction, but once you have prima facie evidence, you know that you are now, you are inoculated from any allegation of malicious prosecution. We need to get that on the way in terms of getting things together. In other jurisdictions, sometimes the case is going on and evidence is being gathered. Why do we have to wait until we have the perfect case? Because there will never be the perfect case, and we will wait on Godot. Madam Webster, Member Webster Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a bit disturbed, right? You'd have heard earlier today that and it's been said, the vast majority of illegal firearms are coming through our legal ports. And we further heard that the vast majority are high port rifles. Recently, I would have seen in the news where little children became collateral damage, and that particularly affected me as a mother and as the minister with responsibility for children in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Commissioner, you would have noted that sometimes it may be difficult for the police to access certain bonds to do necessary investigation. What would you recommend to improve that process? What can be done? Is the customs placed under the right ministry? Should it be? I'm asking because I'm really, really concerned. I'm concerned not for me, but for the children of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thanks very much to you again, Chair. The Customs and Excise is placed under the Ministry of Finance, and the traditional remit, as was mentioned earlier, is to really and truly deal with the taxes. And yes, they have a law enforcement side, right? I believe that we definitely need to look at it, you know, because even though there is law enforcement issues in the Act, you know, traditionally is what they focus on. And with this new development that we are having in relation to the whole aspect of firearms and realizing that the law enforcement side now must take precedence, right? I think that they need to really and truly look at that aspect of it. And we are working out, like from the heads with discussions with the Minister of National Security, and we have some agreement in relation to the police coming in and when we have information to get at these various bonds and sheds and where it was traditionally that this is a particular person's space and we cannot enter and we have to go and get a warrant before and deal with it and all of that. But the point is that we will use what is afforded before us in the law. And if we have hot information in relation to we will do what is required to be done. But the relationship is very, very important. But the laws binding it is very important too, because I may have a very good relationship with the present control, but when then the other person now you have to. So let us look at it, amend the law to create the glue that is required for us to go forward to deal with this issue. And even though you didn't deal with this aspect, the chair had made a statement. And I just wanted an opportunity for the Senior Superintendent Francis to mention a suggestion that we have made to the Attorney General in relation to the amendment of the law so that we can, in fact, be more effective in charging beyond possession of firearms and ammunition when we actually interdict persons with firearms. We wish to make certain recommendations. So I don't know if you will permit Mr. Francis. Yeah, Mr. Francis, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. So with respect to the whole issue of prosecuting persons, we have in 2019, an amendment was made to the Firearms Act, which created the offense of possession of firearms for the purpose of trafficking. We have charged persons for that offense. However, that offense binds us in the context of the person must be either in actual or constructive possession of 2 or more firearms for us to charge them for the offense of possession for the purpose of trafficking. Notwithstanding, the side note in the legislation says trafficking in firearms, that offense is not in the legislation, as we have it in the Dangerous Drugs Act. Notwithstanding, the law gives us a definition of what trafficking is. The offense itself is not in the legislation. So, for example, under the definition of trafficking, importation is defined as trafficking. The challenge we have, though, is when there's an importation through one of the bonds, through firearms in a barrel. That offense, we investigated jointly with the Customs and Excise, and they are better fit to charge in that particular instance under Section 213 with respect to importation of prohibited goods, because there's no requirement on their part to establish that whole issue of possession. The police on that side, though, we are not able to charge for any trafficking offense pursuant to that importation, and then to take the investigation further inland at the gangs that may be involved in the importation. The current construct of the law doesn't facilitate that.
So sometimes we charge under the Firearms Act, charge under the normal traditional Firearms Act for illegal possession of firearms, Section
Well,
5.
No, what I'm saying, Chair, is
Yes.
that with respect to the port,
Yes.
where we have the main challenge,
Yes.
is that for the police, we have to get evidence of knowledge to charge for possession of the firearms for the purpose of trafficking in the bond on the part of the consignee.
I have said to you, I've seen it one more time, and I will not say it anymore. There is no perfect charge. Knowledge can be inferred from the surrounding circumstances. You all have experienced police officers. Lots of your police officers now, Mr. Commissioner, have gone to law school. They understand the case of Peter Coltest. The Court of Appeal has ruled in Peter Coltest about constructive knowledge and possession. Justice Mark Mohammed at first instance in Marcus Brown. I say no more. My question, and Madam Webster Roy, would you have me do this? I'm hearing a disconnect between the bringing to the fore and the bringing to account of members of the service and the length of time that it takes. I asked this of the Port Authority, I ask it of the police service, and I ask it at customs. Do you think, in light of all these delays, and particularly in the context of deviant officers, that the time has come for us to review our constitutional arrangements as it relates to the service commissions? Port Authority, let me hear from you, Chairman.
I'll defer to the superintendent to respond to that question.
Yeah, definite yes to your question.
Pardon?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Police service. The police. Public, you will be the Police Service Commission. So you're a commission, Police Service Commission. Do you think the time has come now to review the constitutional arrangements as it relates to the commission, the Police Service Commission and the police service, particularly in areas of discipline?
There is always need to review it, but within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you know, we have that our complaints division that deals with matters, and in most instances, our police officers, once they cross the line, they are charged and placed before the court, and the court deals with it in a particular manner. Our Police Service Commission actually operates as an appeal in relation to decisions made with disciplinary matters, right? So they always need to review things, you know, but I don't believe that we have such a significant issue like what was mentioned here in really as what exists within the Customs and Excise.
Customs, Madam Controller.
Yeah, most certainly.
Most certainly, what, ma'am?
That there is room for constitutional reform with the service commissions.
There's room for constitutional reform.
Review.
Review.
Yes.
Madam Webster Roy.
Thank
And
you.
then Member Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Comptroller, you have indicated in response to a previous member that you're trying to put things in place, but you have encountered some challenges from, you said, staff as well as stakeholders, right? So is it fair for me to say that the overriding issue is not really an issue of resources? Because I accept the fact that you say you don't have the full complement of staff, you don't have the 700 that is on the establishment. I accept the fact that you said that you have some constraints, you don't have the scanners, etc. But am I fair in my assessment to say maybe the pervasive issues are a lack of will, collusion, and corruption? Am I fair in my assessment?
Chair, I don't think it's a lack of will, neither collusion, maybe corruption to a certain extent,
I will ask you.
but my division would welcome specialized training with the staff for these activities.
If I may add to the Comptroller's contribution, there must be an understanding that there is a interdependency with border security and revenue collection and trade facilitation. One cannot exist without the other. In fact, in order for you to protect and collect revenue, you must be in an environment that is secure. With respect to staffing, law enforcement is heavily dependent on one major asset, and that major asset is human resources. The more bodies you have on the ground, the commissioner would be able to testify to this. It increases your ability to address issues as firearm, the illegal importation of firearms. What we have to grasp is, at transit sheds, Customs is the only entity legally to examine every item that is brought into the country. If you only have 2 officers at a station, if you have scanners, you still don't have the resources to effectively examine and detect illicit items such as firearms and narcotics. There is collaboration between the port, TTPS, and Customs. The sharing, this aspect is one that must be improved, because if these 3 entities don't work together, share information, then we won't be able to move forward. So that is I believe that is a major issue, collaboration. If indeed the majority of the firearms there's evidence of this, then even with our limited resources, information would assist us in using that, optimizing the use of the limited resources we have to detect and arrest those involved in the illegal trafficking of firearms. Is optimizing the resources you have.
Chairman, I have to say that I'm very disappointed in what I've heard so far, particularly regarding the issue of scanners at the port in the context of what we're experiencing now in the country at the hands of illegal guns. Because the Commissioner of Police, the Acting Commissioner of Police, and the Minister of National Security are both on record as indicating that, contrary to a notion held before that, well, the illegal guns were coming into the country, and ammunition, because that's an issue too, our attention should have been placed on beaches and nooks and crannies, that areas that we have full remit over as a state are serving to our detriment in the country. And when we look at the murder rate in the country, I know the knee-jerk reaction is to look at the TC Police Service because, well, they're the primary law enforcement agency. But as Member De Freitas said, they can't use the guns if they can't get in here. And the SSA indicated when they were before us, and we could not broadcast a lot of it yet. 2017 illegal firearms, 8,154. 2019 illegal firearms, and the 2017 value was put at 100 million TT dollars. 2019, it increased to 9,389. The market value was $119 million. 2021, it increased by 1,659 to 11,043. Market value raised to 144 million. So while the police and other agencies are doubling down on their efforts to try to stymie illegal guns in the country, putting a lot of resources, the public could get the impression, well, it's coming through the legal ports and it's causing havoc in the country, literal havoc. So when I say I'm disappointed because we have to put the connection now. The Commissioner of Police acting indicated 116 illegal guns were taken off the streets for the year so far. Is that accurate, Acting Commissioner? That is rifles and submachine.
526 so far, but out of that, 116 is submachine guns and rifles, which is a record in relation to the recovery of those type of weapons.
Right, and so that's about 1/3 of the 1,659 that the SSA identified illegally coming into the country. So my question to the persons, the officials of the Customs and Excise Division, is there anything in the interim, given the gravity of this situation, because I think this issue of illegal guns coming in through legal ports is a crisis because of the havoc one high-powered weapon can have on law-abiding citizens, including children. Is there anything that the system you can put in place while you await the acquisition of these new scanners to try to stymie this flow of illegal guns through legal ports? Or is there anything you have put in place?
One thing we have put in place is, as the Commissioner indicated, a sharing of intel between the both agencies. The only other option in the absence of these scanners is increased physical examination.
Of containers?
Increased physical examination. In the absence of scanners, that is the only alternative, which would result in delays in the delivery of containers, containerized cargo.
Madam Deputy Controller, I do suggest respectfully that the population would err on the side of safety as opposed to expediency when it comes to lives. Can I go to the Chairman of the Port Authority, Mr. Alexander? And going back to the issue of port police, would it surprise you to know that in 2017, I do believe it is, or 2018, when the committee in its iteration in the 11th Parliament toured the port facilities, there were several gaps identified. The CARICOM jetty was like an open sepulchre. One could walk off the street and walk into the CARICOM jetty. People could come off of boats unchecked from Caribbean CARICOM neighbors and walk into Port of Spain unchecked. It was a major gap. Has that been rectified?
Chairman, that has in fact improved. At the moment, the port police and the customs actually provide security to get to governing access into the CARICOM area. The very nature of the operations at CARICOM there are some inherent risks in the way the operations take place. We are struggling to
Would it surprise you to know that I walked into that area 2 weeks ago?
No, it doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise you that I just walked into the area, nobody stopped me, nobody asked me any questions. Yeah. And I walked up by the jetty and I walked past the boats, and I could have gone onto a boat and come off, and nobody stopped. So that wouldn't surprise you.
That does not surprise me.
And that you describe as an improvement.
Sorry?
That you describe just as an improvement.
Or based on what it was, it is an improvement. Yes.
So me being able to walk into the CARICOM jetty unchecked is an improvement. Wow. So before I could have walked in, now I can still walk in. It's an improvement? Chairman?
Remember, the circumstances literally, it's not an improvement.
Or so you're changing your answer now?
No. Okay. Let me. But the reality is, based on the organization and the geography on the port, and the way it is set up and the way things are operating, there are significant challenges that are institutional, and it does affect the way that we provide the services. Right now, the CCTV system in the port, for example, has been significantly improved. So there's a lot more.
So you can see me walking in. But you wouldn't stop me.
Sorry.
You could see me walking, you know, but you don't stop me. All right, let me move on, because time is against us.
But if I may I just make one?
Thank you.
May I just make one contribution, sir? Just one.
Please.
With respect to the Queen's Hall. The Ministry of Finance has advised the Port Authority that funds will be made available from the Ministry of Finance to erect a gate to restrict vehicular traffic going into and out of the...
So funds will be made available to restrict?
To build a gate, sorry, gate.
When
to erect a gate.
When we spoke to Port Authority and your good selves 5 years ago, we heard the same thing. We heard the exact same thing. So I'm not too comforted by that. Let me just move on quickly. Commissioner, you indicated earlier on that courier services are now heavily involved in importing contraband, including illegal guns. Can you give us more details on that? And are there particular services involved that you've identified and personnel that you have under surveillance?
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair. I just want to
want you to be
yes.
too short because we...
Because I have one quick question after that. So
yes, well, I just want to correct some figures. I said 526 is 626 in relation to the recovery of firearms. I just want to correct that for the record.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned in relation to the problem with firearms, and I said it directly connect with narcotics. And we have the FedEx, system where in some instances drugs and firearms, and we have several detections here with our cooperation with the customs, right? And we have the one area, and we talk about the Swiss ports and all the other places, but we have a whole list of different locations in relation to the FedEx where it have been breached in relation to the courier service. There are some other minor ones, but the main one we have identified is the FedEx.
And those are citizens or companies importing these?
Right. In some instances, persons were in fact charged in relation to these particular.
And finally, because I know our time is against us, the SSA gave us the market value of the illegal gun, 100 million in 2017, 190 million in 2019, in 2021, 144 million, with an average of 17,429 TT dollars per weapon. That's the average. Would you, as the commissioner, the authorizing agent, have a sense of the size of the legal gun market in the country, inclusive of ammunition, based on the cost of the weapons, persons who have imported weapons and ammunition, including the range of weapons available for importation in the country? Would you have that? And I ask the question in the context of the statements you would have given and the Minister of National Security about the number of guns, I think 108 now being used to commit crimes, and us managing that in the country in terms of the size of that legal gun market, including dealers.
So you are talking about the legal?
Yes.
The legal gun market. Mm-hmm. Well, in relation to the illegal guns on paper, right, we have seen that within probably the last 3 years or so, on paper, we're seeing about 124,000 firearms on paper that was requested to come into the country. However, from data that we have, physical data that we receive from the customs up to this point, we see an average of 17,000, right? The license that was required by the dealers is showing those numbers coming out of the particular audit report. Is showing that kind of number.
70,000 annually?
Right? Was 124,000 on paper for over a 3-year period. Mm-hmm. But then over the 3-year period, from the data supplied to us from customs, we are seeing up to this point, because I think they're still doing some work, that officially that we show that 17,000 came into the country, and we are waiting for additional data from customs.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman of the Port Authority and General Manager, Madam Controller, Deputy Controller, Assistant Controller, and Assistant Controller, and acting commissioner and senior superintendent. This was an eye-opener to us, but it has opened it has renewed the appetite and the will of this committee. We can tell you that we, the committee, and Member Moonilal, Member Lakshmi Dayal, Member Webster Roy, De Freitas, and Richards, we intend, based on your submissions, Madam Controller, to work to have a letter penned to the relevant bodies, wherever they are, by close of business, to show you how serious we are as a committee. Committee members, would you allow me to do it by close of business tomorrow? Absolutely. Tomorrow. That's the urgency that we see this situation of illegal firearms and the havoc that it's wreaking on the population. We would want to call each entity back, but from what transpired today, Member Mitchell, I think it will have to be an individual session. We need an afternoon with each of you, including the Port Authority. We need an afternoon with you. We will, and it may be as soon as, because Customs, you want to call you back first. It may be as soon as December, depending on the schedule, but certainly we are not going beyond January. We are not going beyond January 2023. If it is that December is not convenient, we are not going beyond January, and we start. So we want to thank you for your participation this afternoon. When we are finished with the Customs, we want to have a session with the port and thereafter the police. So you are forewarned, and try to make no travel plans within that period, please. We wish you all the best, a safe travels home, and I'd like to adjourn the public part of this meeting for a private session. You all are excused.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.